just want us to go back a bit and just explore what creates emotion. So what are they the result of? What are the type of situations or scenarios that can make us experience particular emotions? Write it in the chat. Love, absolutely. Yeah. Life experiences. Yeah, absolutely. Spending time with people. Absolutely. Triggers. Yeah. Whether positive or negative. Arguments. Absolutely. The environment, the connection, work. Yeah. And the stresses of work. Yeah. Changes. Being human. Absolutely. We're all humans having a human experience. Past experiences. Absolutely. Relationships, perceived threats, absolutely. So it's not just threats, but also perceived threats and how we interpret things, what people say, how they respond, how their body language is. So all of these things, really good answers. All of these things, are different things that can have an impact on us. Yeah, painting, books, absolutely. Loss of a loved one, your mood. So all of these things play a key role in terms of creating the emotions we experience. Study, yeah, absolutely. And they're a result of all these different things. And I think it's really important that we are mindful of that, because there is so many different experiences, there's so much different things that go on, and it's what I tend to call the onion approach, because there's layers to the difficulties that people are experiencing this time, which impacts on well-being. And as you can see, as a cut the onion in there, there's so many different layers. There's so much different things that are going on, and I think it's really important that we are aware of that. So people also put fear and challenges, buying something I wish or like, and ill health. Absolutely. So let's look at some of these layers of this onion. So it's things like workload, having a heavy workload, having a lot of clients, who may be challenging with complex needs on your workload, or on your caseload, sorry, or even working long hours. One of the things that I found when I've been doing this training with different organizations is that because of the change of routine, people are working longer hours now, and it's about recognizing the impact what that can have on people. Then we have things like seasons. So the winter season can be difficult for many people because it's lighter, so it's darker sooner. Some people suffer with SAD, seasonal affective disorder. So there can be all these different factors in terms of the seasons that we're in. Then we can have relationship issues. So it was already mentioned about being remotely and not being as close to people, and how that's having an impact on relationships. Then we can have things like physical or emotional pain. Now, for many people, they're not aware that actually the brain regulates physical and emotional pain in exactly the same way. A broken heart hurts just as much as a broken hand. And so, because often people are not aware of this, they do not pay the same amount of attention to people's emotional pain as they do to people's physical pain. Then we have carrying trauma. So, whether it's something we've experienced, whether it's something we've seen, or whether it's something we've heard, and it's that trauma and how that impacts on us, how that resonates within us, because trauma often you will find it resonates in the hip area. So sometimes when we're stiff and our hips are really rigid, that can be an impact of trauma. Not in every case, but it can be an impact and a result of trauma. Then there's financial problems. Some people, especially during this period, have been laid off, and it's coping with that, it's managing that, and how that impacts on people psychologically, emotionally, and physically. Then it's the isolation. There's some people who during this time, they can't see people, they're isolated. I know someone who's been in their house for the last 6 months because they've got health issues. They can't have anyone around, and so they've just been isolated for 6 months, and they're finding it really difficult. Then there's the environment and the pressures. Yeah, so that could be the home environment, that could be the work environment, whatever the environment is, because the environments dictate behaviors, and then it's the pressures that come out of having to do things, being in certain environments. Then we have the limited support network. So some people may not have a lot of people that they can contact or use as a support during this time. And so it's, it's how that impacts on people. The more connections we have, the more people we are connected to, is the more healthy we are. Then we've got things like mental health issues, and that's been on the rise during this the pandemic and the lockdown. In terms of people's mental health, low moods, depression, it's really impacted on people, and it's also caused a kind of spike in alcohol use. And alcohol also affects mental health, and it also enhances things like depression. Then we've got like the guilt and shame, those emotions, those two very strong emotions that often keep people held captive. And that could be because of they feel they're not coping, that could be because of their experience, that could be because they can't provide for their family. There could be a whole range of different reasons that may trigger people off with those emotions. And then there's stress and burnout, which we're going to look at later on. Then there's things that's outside of our control but often may impact on us. Things like racism, sexism, ageism, and all the other isms that can have an impact on us in terms of if we hear about it, if we see, or if we know someone who has experienced that, or if we are actually the individual experiencing it ourselves. Then we have the things like discrimination and the injustices, the things that are on the news, things that, with the events that's happening, like with George Floyd and, with so many issues that's gone on and that we're seeing that's happening that also can link to carrying the trauma, feeling the trauma of things. Then we have the family and the domestic issues, things that's going on inside the house, how, people suffering with cabin fever and just, arguments that are coming because people are in each other's space all the time. Then we have COVID-19 and all of the chaos and the dilemmas and the lockdowns and how that has impacted on people's well-being. And as a byproduct of that is the fears, the anxieties, the worry, what's happening next, what's going to happen with this vaccine, all these other things that are all elements of the onion. And as a result of all the things I've said so far, can impact on sleep, and sleep is so fundamental for our well-being. I'm going to touch more on that later. And then it's the poor diet. So someone even said it before, the emotional eating. And, when we are feeling certain ways, our diet tends to change. We tend to eat differently and we're eating more to make us feel good. And we're going to look at why that is when we look at the hormones, but our diet can be greatly affected.